I don't even know if I mentioned, but I'm Ben Albert. I run Albert Marketing, and I am the marketing director on the board here at ASCM Rochester. But I want to pass it over to the president of ASCM Rochester, Larry Maggio, so you can take a moment to maybe talk about what we do and introduce our esteemed guest here today. Larry, I want to kick it to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ben. So welcome everybody. And as the president of ASCM Rochester, we're just like most every other ASCM entity around the world. We're here to help educate in supply chain management. This event is particularly going to be very useful for all you lucky people that are here and those that will pick it up by recording later. And when Ben talks about members and non-members, we in Rochester, New York, view everybody as either a member or a member that's in waiting. So we almost treat you identically in that regard, and we recognize that your time is short, and we have to be able to only take a piece that you are able to share with us. Recognize that we do know where good supply chain management practices abound. And when I met Thomas Beil, this is not an introduction yet, Thomas, but when I met Thomas Beil, I knew right away that perfect planner is something that other people need to see and hear about. And this is the first time our chapter has broken away from just putting on a best practices theory discussion and brought in an actual company to do this full time. So, so we've moved virtually. We do still have in-person meetings around Rochester. We're the only New York State authorized chapter to teach the Apex education. So we try to branch out locally as well, but we're focused on being as broad as possible so we can get the message out. Okay. So let me, so also I might also say, for those of you that are keeping pace with latest technologies, you've heard of just in time, you've heard of lean, you've heard of, you name it, it's been out there. And I'm not saying any one of those are bad things, but the MRP process in and of itself, I've been at this for a number of years, 40 plus and running. And I can tell you, I've been there, I've seen it. And you can fill in any excuse you want about why you can't seem to get on time deliveries, why your inventory bloats. You can cry about your systems, but the bottom line is if you've implemented your ERP system correctly, there's still going to be one lagging challenge. What do you do with all those messages? And that's where I can't wait to see what Thomas has to tell us about how we manage them efficiently. So with that, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to use the acronym AI, and it doesn't mean artificial intelligence. In this case, it means actual intelligence because Thomas won't admit it, but he built this software by being a practitioner, knowing what he went through. So think about that as you listen. And now I used the artificial intelligence to write this about 2 minutes ago, and let's see how close it is to being halfway decent. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm thrilled to see so many of our members, and now you know what kind of members every one of you are, and supply chain professionals and guests tuned in today for our ASCM Rochester chapter event. It is my distinct privilege to introduce our featured speaker, Thomas Beil, the founder and visionary behind Perfect Planner. Throughout his career, Thomas has focused on tackling one of the most complex challenges in our field, taking the chaos out of supply chain planning and turning it into clear, actionable, and repeatable success. Understanding that off-the-shelf rigid processes often fall short in the fast-moving operational environment. He founded Perfect Planner to bridge that gap. And under his leadership, Perfect Planner has helped organizations streamline operations, eliminate bottleneck, and build far more reliable end-to-end planning networks. I won't read on and on and on because there's only two more paragraphs. Take it away, Thomas.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for having me today. And I really appreciate everybody who joined this lunch and learn. welcome to a little talk about Perfect Planner, but we're going to try to balance not just a direct like sales presentation. I'd love to show you what we built, but I'd also like to show you what led us to that. So the vision behind Perfect Planner was really born in the trenches of large Fortune 500 manufacturers. It was meticulously built and designed for those complex BON driven make to stock producers of different products, and that they're utilizing ERP systems and MRP functions within those systems. And they have planner buyers who support that inventory management replenishment function. And so a lot of times what you'll see in these companies is manufacturers will title these roles as material planners or materials analysts. But what you find is that most large companies have hundreds of these people working for them and trying to make sense of all that confusion that Larry so graciously talked about, that we both experienced during our careers. And so this lunch and learn, the agenda we're going to have is not too long. I'm going to keep the presentation short, and then we'll get straight into a demo. But I'll give a brief speaker introduction about myself. Then we're going to discuss why MRP alone does not scale very well, how Perfect Planner tackles this challenge, and the impact of the platform we've built. And then we'll jump straight into a software demo. I will do my best to try to make sure that I'm keeping up with the chat and the questions that you're asking, but I will also have time at the end that you can ask questions as well. And so let's just kick it off. So for a quick introduction, my background has really lived at the intersection of supply chain operations, technology, and continuous improvement. I spent most of my time in industry with companies like Whirlpool, Honeywell, Kasai, and Moly, all manufacturers. And I worked my way from systems, putting in an SAP system right out of college. That was my big project for my first role, and then moved into planning roles and then into operational leadership. And along the way, I've had the opportunity to lead digital transformation teams and initiatives in those Fortune 500 companies, specifically Honeywell and Whirlpool. And those experiences really changed the direction of my career. I began to realize that companies weren't struggling because they lacked technology and data. They were overwhelmed with data, actually. But really what it was, better technology wasn't necessarily producing better results. I saw a lot of technologies being put in. And so I knew that we had to get smart about that. And that observation really what started my research journey and eventually led me into academia. Today I'm on the management faculty at UGA, where I continue to explore the intersection of technology and decision science. So that's really kind of the area that I wanted to get into. I believe the next evolution in AI is going to be decision intelligence, or DI, and where we are able to have technology help us know exactly what we need to do every single day. And so that's really where Perfect Planner was born. And we like to talk about decision intelligence quite frequently. And if that's a new term for you, it's really just a matter of using technology and decision science to provide more than just information. We're actually going to help people determine what they need to work on, what matters, what requires attention, and then what actions need to be taken. And so that's what we're going to explore today in the short presentation. So to get us started, there's a really well-known fact in manufacturing, and that's most companies still rely on planner buyers to manually pull data from ERP systems, run reports, analyze in spreadsheets, and then try to figure out, what do I need to work on today? And in fact, what you find is that about 75% of the day is being spent on this type of administrative or analytical work. So in leading digital transformation teams, what we noticed, and we specialized in the planning spaces, it was, wow, there is a huge portion of the day that really just appears to be waste. And so what we really got back to was looking at the systems, looking at the ERP systems and the MRP outputs. And we noticed that they were built to really process transactions, but not to prioritize work. So planners end up spending most of their day just trying to figure out where the problems are and what to work on, instead of trying to fix them, supporting the strategic projects and other initiatives that they were really hired to do. And unfortunately, the result is inconsistent decisions, human error, shortages, excess inventory, and this constant cycle of firefighting. But when I take a step back, what I realize is that planning isn't really about reports or data. It's really about answering one simple question. What should I work on today? Especially for those planner buyers and manufacturing plants, and the greatest planners are the ones that do this in their head. So they're able to do that prioritization. They have that process knowledge and that just the knowledge about all the suppliers and the parts and how those get consumed. And they're constantly prioritizing those MRP messages around shortages, order issues, and even cost opportunities or inventory savings opportunities that are going to create that business impact. And so the challenge is that, as you can see on the right-hand side through a lot of the research I was doing and publishing, we have what we call the impact stack. And beyond just the fact that there's a tremendous amount of work and there's a lot of inefficiency within this particular role, it also sits at the bottom of what we call that impact stack. And that shows the information flow from the customer to planning. So every upstream decision, error, or change cascades down and it lands on the planner. So they're literally getting beat up on all sides. Now, I experienced this firsthand many years ago at Molly when I was a planner and then leading planning teams at Kasai and then trying to help Whirlpool and Honeywell understand how should we plan as an organization. It was really one of the most impacted roles that I've seen in the supply chain, hands down. And so when you go out to look for solutions, there really wasn't a whole lot. So what this results in is the outcome is the fact that MRP by itself, it's a great feature. We love having it as part of our systems, especially if we're manufacturers, but it does not scale well. And so that planning complexity is going to outgrow our ability to scale, with humans, basically. And so you have those multi-level BOMs, you have thousands or even hundreds of thousands of components and raw materials that need to be purchased. You have all the safety stock and, material master, item master parameters that have to be adjusted. And then, of course, every single day, you're going to be overwhelmed with MRP exception messages. And so it's great that MRP produces this output for us, and does all these calculations that would take us, days or weeks to do manually. But it doesn't standardize how planners execute against it. And that's where inconsistency and costs enter the system. So we need to do something about that. So Perfect Planner was really built to tackle those challenges, and the difference is that we are going to do our best to automate that planner decision-making layer above MRP. So our platform analyzes every part every single day. We look out 6 months, and we're going to do the analysis that planners normally do manually. And we do it automatically, and we do it consistently. There's no human error. And we also perform all of the root cause analysis and lean analysis. So we understand that just because we can pinpoint a shortage doesn't help us understand why it happened, because we know that a lot of issues are actually a revolving door. They're recurring, they keep coming back. And so we need to be able to support the decision-making process with really good insights. And so that's what we've done. So we actually calculate over 2,500 things for every part every single day. We are looking, we like to claim that if something changes, we see it. We're looking at what transpired over time, what happened yesterday, and, even able to project out what we think is going to happen in the future. And so in turn, what we've been able to do is remove about 75% of the administrative and analytical work that planners usually do each day. And so now they can get straight to execution. They don't have to hunt for problems anymore. And really under the hood, what we've done is, thanks to technology and advanced technology, is we've been able to build the IntelliPlanning logic engine that is going to be able to do all of this analysis for planners and get them to a very easy output. And so instead of exporting MRP data to Excel or some of these other things like Power BI, what we're able to do is we're able to get planners walking in the morning and straight to execution. And what we provide them is a prioritized to-do list. So it's a weighted task list of all the things that they need to do that day based on what our analysis shows. So this includes shortages. We're going to be looking for shortages and varying degrees of shortages and how that impact is. We can also look at PO messages. So I know there's a lot of PO message filters out there. Those software products do exist, but we incorporate that as well. We can look at safety stock imbalances, obsolescence risk. We can look at where minimum order quantity inefficiencies occur and a whole host of other things. And so really what we wanted to do with Perfect Planner is help with that prioritization and all of that mediation of all these MRP messages to help determine that urgency. And so then that is what is going to help us, execute in this role and make it more standardized and scalable. So the benefits of using Perfect Planner are pretty significant. When you standardize execution logic, what happens is that expedite culture is going to decline. You're going to have stabilized inventory, planner variability, one planner to the next. It sure seems like everybody does it their own way. That drops off. And then onboarding is going to accelerate tremendously. I don't need them to know 40 transactions in SAP anymore. If they know 3 or 4, they're going to be just fine. And then also they don't have to be Excel wizards because spreadsheets for the most part are going to be gone. And so there's a lot of things about that. Also with all the task management that we're able to provide is that that's going to give leadership tremendous visibility into a function that has historically kind of been a black box. And so what's great is that, we're understanding that there's waste in this process. And as a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, there's waste in every process. We know the the large percentage of each process is waste. But what we can do is we want to really magnify the value that these planner buyers bring. And the best way to do that is to let them get into more than just tactical. A lot of what you find with these planner buyers is that they turn into firefighters. I saw this in all the companies I worked at. I experienced it myself, and it's sad because we bring them in. They have great ideas. We would like them to contribute to projects and strategic initiatives, but yet the tactical work, the administrative side is just overwhelming. And so we want to get them back to adding the value that we know that they can. So that is, we've got to minimize the waste. We got to minimize the tactical. And so that is what we've aimed to automate. And so for companies, what we're going to be able to do is after implementation, what is going to change for you and your company if you were to start using Perfect Planner is that really the first thing is the operating model is going to change. So planners no longer are going to start their day sorting through exception messages and exporting MRP data into Excel. They're going to start with ranked execution. And it's going to be a plan for them, a to-do list that they can walk through and attack, very, very quickly. Shortages are going to be surfaced months in advance. We're able to pinpoint those really well. We're able to, a lot of times, planner buyers can only see out so far. Like, we're lucky if we can have a clear to build for the next few days or even for a week out. Well, now we're going to be able to do that months in advance and start pinpointing those issues so they don't blindside us. Execution logic is going to become standardized across sites. So if, Johnny wants to go take a vacation for a week, nobody's freaking out of who's going to cover for him because they don't understand his deck. So we can start standardizing how we execute in this function. And onboarding is going to accelerate. Usually with Perfect Planner, you have planners that are up and running in less than a month. Thanks to just the fact that we have removed a lot of the technical elements that they're going to have to learn, which is usually what creates a longer onboarding time. And then really for the first time, leadership can absolutely see every aspect of how planning is going, what tasks are required. So we also support middle management and upper management in being able to understand how this function is performing and what is the health of the materials. And so with that, if there's no questions to this point, I'll pause just for a minute to see if there's any questions, and then we can jump into a demo. And if you feel more comfortable putting questions in the chat, I'm happy to answer that way too. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the software application. So in a lot of the companies I worked for and working in digital transformation, something that really stood out was the fact that there was such a learning curve to a lot of these systems, and there was a plethora of systems. And so one thing about Perfect Planner that I wanted to do was I didn't want to add more of the same. So I know that there's spreadsheets, there's lots of spreadsheets, there's lots of systems, but really what I was thinking about was the fact that we've got to make this as simple as possible. If I could just print off a to-do list and hand it to someone, that'd be really effective. But I also know that it needs to be cloud-based. There's a lot of things that we need to do, and we also need to connect it to our analytics engine and make sure that we have really high accuracy and that we also have repeatability, which is really important. And so what we decided to do was streamline the application as much as possible. I do not want planners clicking around or spending a bunch of time in the application. I'd rather them be executing on what it's telling them to do. And so what we got to was really 3 views. So we have 3 major views. We have the planner view, we have a part details view, and we have a performance view. Now, the planner view is, kind of the bread and butter of Perfect Planner. This is where we have created a priority system, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But we've created priorities A through L, and those are the priorities that the planners need to, or the tasks that planners need to go through. But even within an A, and we'll say what an A is a projected stock out within supplier lead time. So even within an A, if we have 10 A's that we need to tackle for the day, well, in what order? Some are more critical than others. And that's where technology can really help us with the analysis. So we can look at all the data. So when we receive data from companies, we're going to receive a lot of data, and that is usually anywhere from, 12 to 15 data sets that are coming from the company every single day. And we're able to analyze that data and provide the insights on it. So what we have here is really a to-do list. And we're able to rank these. We're able to give the highest level priority. We can give the part number. And then all of those 2,500 plus things that we're calculating every single day for every part. We also know that, if I throw a spreadsheet with 2,500 columns at someone, that's not going to help them do their job better. So instead, what we decided to do was, okay, can we apply situational awareness? Technology allows us to do that. So we understand that there's a lot of insights and analytics that we're calculating, but they really fall into one of 4 categories. You have shortage projection, root cause analysis, order management, and lean analysis. So if I'm reviewing a part, all I really need to understand is the fact that, what data do I need to see? What insights do I need to see? And where does it fall? Which category does it fall into? And so that is how we're able to do that within this planner view. So whereas we're watching a bunch of different things from shortages to order management activities to even lean requirements, what we're able to do is provide all of the analytics that is relevant to the situation with this part to the planner buyer. And so what you see here is the first category is shortage projection. So we'll take this first part as an example. And I can see that, hey, in 2 days, I'm going to be short. I'm going to be short 1,000 pieces on that day. It's within supplier lead time. It's going to last for 2 days. It seems like it ends on the 22nd. That's interesting. And the worst position on the 22nd is going to be 2,400 pieces in the hole. Now, the IPL engine, which we call the Intel Planning Logic Engine, it's also going to make a recommendation. It's going to look at all the data, and it's going to make a recommendation on what it thinks the planner buyer needs to attack first when it comes to this part. And so it makes this recommendation. There's in-transit quantities, and you need those to resolve the deficit. I can also see when I start eating into my safety stock, which is tomorrow, and by tomorrow, I'm going to eat through 68% of it. And then I can see a consumption-based perspective. So we know that forecast, or what we're seeing even on the dependent requirement side, doesn't always match how we're actually consuming. So what we're able to also do is we take all that transaction history over the past year, and we're able to create a projection based on how it's consuming. So we can see if something is over consuming or under consuming, and basically giving a secondary perspective to the planner to let them know, does this buy me time? Yes or no? And so that is something else that was asked, voice of the customer, and we were able to provide that. The second category is root cause analysis. So it's great that we know that there is a problem, but now we need to know, well, why did this happen? What occurred or what transpired that created this problem? And so this is where we're going to look at dozens of things. What changed, what's changing over time, what happened yesterday, and we're able to pinpoint why this happened. And so you can see that a lot of times root cause analysis is not just one thing. It's usually many things. And so we're going to try to pinpoint all of those things to be able to support the planner in, hey, let's keep this from being a revolving door. So this one's pretty easy. It's just a past due order. So we were expecting 3,000 pieces. They're past due. They didn't show up. That's a problem. But also, based on the calculations that the IPL engine's doing, we can also see that we need to make a safety stock adjustment. And so it's saying that our safety stock is too low. We need to increase it. And so any place where a perfect planner will tell a planner to make an adjustment in their system with like the material master or item master, it's also going to tell them the value of that decision or that change that they're about to make. So basically what this is telling me is that I need to increase my safety stock by 249%, and that will impact my inventory by $5,700. And I need to set that safety stock to 3,300 pieces. Now, we don't just deal with static safety stocks. We also do coverage profile, min-max. We do reorder point. So whatever the strategy that is set up for this part is what the system's going to understand and be able to calculate. But everything is different. It could be that there's been a demand fluctuation. It could be that it is a brand new part. It could be that we're over consuming. It could be that this part was already hot yesterday. All of the root cause analysis is different. Every part is different, right? Plan for every part. Everything is unique, needs to be treated as such. And so what you can see is that if the analysis is just, if it's relevant to the situation, it's going to be dropped in here. So, let's find a really good one. Okay. So down here, this is a really good one because this happens quite frequently, in manufacturing. So we have a brand new part that dropped in. It's not set up. It's phasing in. So requirements came in for it. It's going to phase in 60% in requirements over the next 6 months. All the requirements were a straight drop in, and it has no safety stock. So that needs to be set up for it. So we're even looking at when brand new parts come in, or if they're not set up correctly, we're trying to really cover the full gamut of what is going to be required to manage parts effectively. And so we're going to provide all of that to the planner. And what's really great about this is there's no redundancy. I know a lot of times with these MRP reports, we come in, we run a bunch of reports, and a part shows up on 5 of them. Well, with here, this one part will never show up anywhere else. Everything that needs to be done for this one part, which is the hottest part for the company right now, is right here in this one row. So they can really quickly, a planner can come through and do whatever they need to do. Now, the order management category, this is where we're looking at not just order management like PO messages, that's included here, but we're also looking at deliveries. So this helps fill in a little bit more of the gaps that we're seeing in this example. First we have, yesterday, 1,000 pieces delivered, so 3,000 remain open. I also can see that the next delivery is not coming till the 22nd, which actually makes a lot of sense because we said it was going to end on the 22nd, and that's because this delivery is coming. So that really just helps them understand what is the critical need here, right? We understand that we can't avoid part shortages. There's just a dynamic nature to supply chains. But what we can do is, if we have the information at our fingertips, and very quickly, might I add, then we are able to pivot quicker than we were before. And so that's what we're trying to do here, is just do this. Now, if there are purchase requisitions that haven't converted, if there are, SAs or blanket POs that have not been set up correctly and they're going to be expiring, if there are PO messages like cancel and defer messages, or if there's unconfirmed POs, if you're using a PO environment, we watch all of those things too. And so we're able to kind of drop those, and you'll see those come into this bucket if they're relevant, if they're happening to this part, they'll be in here. And then the last category is the lean analysis. So we actually calculate more things on the lean analysis side and in this category than any other category. And we know it's because it's usually the category or the area of work that falls off the plate. Because we're so focused on tackling shortages and putting out fires that adjusting safety stocks or looking at obsolescence is something that may happen once a quarter or twice a year whenever we can get around to it. And so we calculate a lot of different things in the lean analysis side. And we can calculate when things are phasing out, demand's dropping off, or demand changes. If there is an adjustment to safety stock where we need to reduce safety stock, and we can actually scroll down to a couple. We're looking at overshipments. So that means we're bringing in more product than we actually are consuming. That's a big one. We look at minimum order quantity. So let's see. This is a good one. So it does look like that we're under consuming on this part by 11%. It also states that every time we purchase this, based on our future requirements, every time we purchase this part, we have to purchase 98 days worth, or $891,000. And oh, by the way, over the last 6 months, we have brought in 21% more than we needed or that we consumed, which is $315,000. Now, most likely that's probably because we brought in, a big order with this MOQ. But what we're able to do is basically just help planners also be able to handle the other side, the surplus side of the role, because we know that both shortages and surpluses are really critical. And so that's what we've done with this to-do list. This to-do list is really focused on the planner. We want to support them. We've been able to prioritize this. They're going to know the full scope of work that they need to do each day. I can come in and say, you know what? I've got 15 things to do today. 7 of them are shortages, and I can go one by one and attack these so that I don't just get focused on one thing when I don't realize that there's 6 others that are going to beat me up too. And just like in traditional checklist fashion, you can actually check these things off. You can choose whether or not you want to show them. We can show the completed items or not. But this is really that comprehensive one-page thinking to-do list that we're going to give planners that I wish, I had when I was working in SAP as a planner at Molly and that my teams had. But we also recognize that people want to dig deeper, right? That drill down functionality is really important. And that's where the part details comes in. So if I click on a part number, what I'm going to do is go from that collective view with all the parts, and I'm going to drill into one part. And usually it's not this slow. For some reason, every time I'm on Zoom, it chugs a little bit. But this is where we're going to make it visual. And this is where we're going to drive into that one example part that we were talking about. And so we have part 3892. It's for the site Trenton. And I can see a balance table. We know we like our horizontal plans and our balance sheets as planners. And so what we have here is that, this is basically the horizontal version of MD04 and SAP. And we add a few things in here. So I can see dependent and independent requirements. I can see all the supply elements in green. I can see ASNs, but I can also see the consumption balance. And by the way, I can also see what requirements looked like yesterday. So that's down here in gray. So if something changed, it can be highlighted and pinpointed very quickly. And this goes out 6 months. So we can see that, yeah, there's a problem. We know it's a past due order that just either hasn't been received in at the dock or hasn't delivered yet. But I can also see a lot of other things for this part. So these are all the priorities that we have. So A, B, C, and D are all dealing with shortages. So an A is a stock out within supplier lead time. A B is a stock out outside of supplier lead time. So we wonder why the system didn't pick that up and fix it, but there may be something there. A C is when we deplete more than 60% of our safety stock, and a D is where we deplete more than 30% of our safety stock. We also recognize that B's, C's, and D's turn into A's. So it's another way that we can be proactive and get ahead of it before we have a lot of critical A's that we need to do. A priority E, well, that is tackling a past due supplier order or a past due ASN, which is an F. You have G, which is purchase requisitions. A lot of times in SAP and some of these other systems, what you'll see is that purchase requisition, something happened with SA, or the blanket PO, and the purchase requisitions are being created as placeholders. They're not real supply, and they haven't been converted to POs. And so what happens is that we need to understand if that's going to create a shortage. And so that's why we pinpoint those as well. We also do cancel messages, defer messages, unconfirmed messages if you're using POs, safety stock adjustments, and obsolescence risk. So we can see when things are phasing out. We can calculate how much value is probably going to be sitting there in inventory at the end of that life cycle. And so that is also. So you can see we wanted a comprehensive view of all the things that planner buyers should be doing effectively. And so every single day, these tasks are going to hit their list along with the insights to be able to execute on them effectively. You can also set a critical status. So we know that this was a hot part, but hey, you know what? Let's say we resolve this and I can add some notes in. So let's just say, you know what? Parts found, if I can type right, found on the dock. So come to find out, these were not past due parts. We found them on the dock. And what's really great about the notes and all of these analytics that you're seeing in this solution is that, yes, you can get access to them. You can export. If you want hundreds of columns in a spreadsheet, we allow that. You can do that. But we tie this to the part site combination. So we don't tie it to a planner code. So one of the real benefits about Perfect Planner is that as long as a company is using Perfect Planner, if a particular part starts being managed by another planner and they come into it, they're going to be able to see the complete historical record of all the analytics and all of the notes for that specific part. So that process knowledge, that experience that is going to be now tracked will not be lost when those parts shift over to a new planner. Other things that you can do in the part details view, you can see service levels and period length and risk level. That is to help with the calculations that we're doing on safety stock. Those can be set. As you can see, service level has been grayed out. So if companies don't want planners to have the ability to change these levels, we can lock them. If you know a part's going to be late and you don't want to make any adjustment in your system, but you also don't want that to hit your list for the next 2 days until it arrives, you can actually ignore. You can ignore a particular part up to 30 days into the future. That also can be blocked by companies if they don't want their planners to be able to ignore things. All that part and vendor information from the purchase info record or the material or item master is going to be in here as well, just for quick reference. So you don't have to go into the material master or go into the supplier records and see that. And then also down here, we have an additional information section, which is customizable. So this is all the inventory. So what are the days on hand? What are the values? Where is that inventory? What are the different recommendations for safety stock or coverage profile, reorder point? And we have over 80 different things that can be customized for this section. Even if there's custom things that want to be brought in, that can be brought into this section as well. And every user can create this layout the way that they would like. And we can also see network inventory. So let's say those 3,000 pieces did not show up. Well, guess what? I can see that Salt Lake has 14,000 of them. I need 3,000, and that's 24 days worth for them. So maybe I reach out to Tyler and see if I can get some of those parts from him to keep me going. And then those nice little summaries that you see in the planner view for those 4 categories, shortage, projection, so forth. We just put them over here on the right-hand side just to save a click. So you don't have to go back and forth. So those summaries are going to be in here as well. And that's really what it is. We want to be able to drill down into one part because we know that that's important from time to time. And what we find is that when people start using this system, they will use the part details view more and more along with their system screens. And then when they start trusting it and trusting the output and the accuracy of Perfect Planner, which is really high, that's where they start using the planner view more frequently. But this is a very important screen that we definitely did not want to scrap. So we kept this view as well in Perfect Planner. And what all that work does is as a planner goes through their list, they check off their items. If it's a critical item, they want to know more, they want to put in some notes. What this does is this really supports that communication to leadership. So the third view that we have and the last view is this performance view. And the performance view is really useful for both middle management and upper management. And what we tried to do is, we looked at this as a bottom-up approach. Let's attack the challenges at the planner buyer level. Let's make sure that they are equipped, to have success in their jobs. But then also, what do those supervisors and managers need to see? And what does corporate need to see? And so the performance view is exactly that. So since we have a standardized process, since we have those priorities A through L, now what we can do is we can now create scorecarding systems off those. And since those parts are attached to planners, suppliers, attached to sites, even divisions, we can see all of that. We can now use that same scorecarding system to measure the performance or the health of materials across all levels of that organization. So what you have here is, one of our first KPIs that we created was a material performance score. And you can see that we can see that. So we can look at it as an organization. We can see divisional levels. We can see site levels. And we can even see what is the performance of a planner themselves based on what they're trying to tackle. Now, I also understand that some planners have more challenging parts than others. So really, this is why time series is really powerful here, because we would like to say that, hey, if we provide all this analysis to planners every single day, we understand that usually there's a big cleanup at front. But now with all the root cause analysis, lean analysis, and everything else that they're able to be supported with over a few months, we should see improvement. We should see that people are able to execute more and they're able to tackle more things and also stop those revolving doors. And so that's why we do this. We also have the ability to go one level higher. So I understand that sometimes you'll have like a Toyota that is, managing all these tier one suppliers and they have divisions and they have sites. Well, we can actually go up to an enterprise level if we have to where we can do the same types of calculations. And so that's what's really good. We want to be able to see everything from the planner all the way up to how the organization's doing. We also created vendor impact score. So this is a little bit different than on-time delivery or a scorecarding for a vendor. This is really about, we understand that we have all these priorities that are attached to parts that are attached to vendors or to suppliers. And you know what? That is creating impact for our organization. So what we'd like to do is, can we calculate what is the impact that we're receiving from our supply base? And then we can take that everything from an organization all the way down to an individual vendor level. And so that's something that is, you find that a lot of other departments, because of the analysis that we do at the part level and attaching that to vendors, you find that a lot of other departments also benefit from the analytics that we're calculating too. And we can do priority trending. How are we doing over time? You can look at different priorities. Priority A, how is that doing over the months? Inventory value trending, we know that that's a big important part. And pretty much we can chart just about anything that a company would like to see here. We put some examples up here. We've created a couple KPIs, but ultimately what we have here is, we want to create the corporate dashboard that is really going to support the organization that needs it. And so that's why this area is very customizable. But one thing I really like to show, for my time in middle management, leading a planning team and then moving up the ladder, I just always remember back and I'm like, man, I would really like to know, what the heck is going on in planning every single day. And so what this current priority tracking section is it's really us giving love to that supervisor or manager, that materials manager, that planning supervisor that really would like to understand the breadth of tasks that need to be completed that day and what's actually getting done. And so this is kind of like the to-do list for the manager, for the materials manager. And so what you see here is all the priorities that need to be tackled for the day. I can see what division or site, I can filter on that if I'd like to. I could see yesterday if I'd like to. We have a lot of filtering options. I can see who the planner is. If it is a hot item, like a priority A, I can see when it's going to impact me. But then I can also see what's getting completed, what's getting checked off the list, and what is the critical status that they're putting into the depart details view as well. So I don't have to go ask that planner. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and they're asking me about this part 3892 that we've been using as our example, right away on my iPad, I can pull this up and say, you know what, Jason's working on it. He said he completed it. The issue's been resolved. And oh, by the way, in one click, just like a planner can, I can go into the part details view and I can see all of their notes and I can see all of the root cause analysis. So real quickly, you know what? Jason said the parts were found on the dock this morning. And oh, by the way, it does look like, based on the root cause analysis, that it was due to a past due order, but those parts were sitting on the dock. And so now what we do is we take that data and we're going to empower the supervisor or manager to speak intelligently in those meetings. And then, of course, it also helps from an accountability perspective. So let's say, more than just trying to give information to leadership in a meeting, we can also say, you know what? Hey, why hasn't Jason gotten on to this part yet or this part yet? In fact, Jason owns the 3 hottest parts for the company. So what's going on there? And so what it does is it just helps with that transparency and that management piece. And also, if your companies were like mine during COVID, Whirlpool would have killed for a view like this during COVID, at the corporate level. They would like to know. And so instead, what they did was they're like, you need to give us a list of all the parts that are impacted and all this information every single day. And it saddled the planners with about 3 or 4 hours of extra work every single day during COVID. Instead, we can do this automatically. We can give it to them and they can have this view in the good times and the bad times. And so that's really what we were trying to do with Perfect Planner. How do we tackle these challenges? How do we help planner buyers be really successful with their jobs? How do we have them adding strategic value? When we hire a planner buyer, we don't want them just to put out fires and do expedites. They're not expediters, they're just expediters. We want them adding strategic value because they have bright minds too, right? They're some of the most technical people in the plant, and they have bright ideas that we can action, but we have to give them the ability and the time to do that. And so that is what we wanted to do to support companies with the planners, because I like that saying that we always teach in Lean Six Sigma, that a bad system will beat a good person every single time. And so we want to make sure that we are setting people up for success and we're giving them a system that's going to allow them to have success. And then the manager level, how do we help them have success in managing, these planners and understanding performance? And then for corporate, how do we let them understand how they're doing and what their health of their materials department looks like, at all different levels? And so that's what we decided to build. Now, we do have an export feature. And that piece of it. So I did see here, there's some questions. I would like to do this. So I really like, Andrew, you are absolutely correct. Why don't ERP systems provide this visibility and prioritization? And I've been through a lot of different integrations. I put in an SAP R3 system, and I've been through Ariba and HANA implementations. And I'll tell you, it drives me nuts. And everybody that we talk to here is that they don't provide this. And I'll tell you what it is. The analysis is not as simple because things change in those systems from one hour to the next or one day to the next. What happens is that doesn't have the logic piece built in to really be able to do the analytics. Plus, the amount of data that has to be stored to really do those full comparison analytics is very difficult. Those data tables were not really built to do that or to store that amount of data. And so what we're able to do is the fact that we get a snapshot every single day, we can do that full spectrum analysis. And I'm not really worried about the data storage piece, right? We understand. And then what's great is that since we've defined the process and defined the analytics to support the process, what we're also able to do is we're able to kind of reduce the amount of data storage that we need, because what we're going to do is track the analytics or the insights from one day to the next, not all the raw data. And so that's kind of the path that we took. I can also see some other questions here. Will this tool tell operation leaders what part production orders to prioritize at the work center level? Now that's very interesting. So we actually do have the functionality of bringing in, for instance, which of these raw materials or components are attached to, which finished good level. Although we don't typically bring in the BOM information, what we're able to do is at least pinpoint it at the raw material level. But in the systems, there is usually a connection in either the material master or typically it's an item or a material master, where it will tell you which part impacts which production line or assembly line. And so we're able to kind of make that correlation and connection and bring that information into the system as well. But we do not actually go and validate the BOM. So that was one of the big things. Bill of materials, as we know with these multi-level BOMs, they have tremendous amount of information, and that's a lot of data. So instead, what we've done is, hey, if there's a BOM issue, what we can actually do is we know that there's going to be certain signs that there's a BOM issue, right? We're going to see frequent scrapping events, or not scrapping events, inventory adjustment events, or we're going to see that something is either under consuming or over consuming. And so what we're able to do is, from an analytics perspective, is pinpoint those signs, which are going to be able to kind of point towards, maybe I need to check the BOMs for this raw material or this component. And then back orders would be good to see as well. Okay, so we do look at past due orders. So we actually pinpoint both past due independent demand and dependent demand. So that is, and then also we have the ability through the way that we set up. So what we've done is we have a standardized data map, and then we actually have a profile that we create for every company, and we can set some of those parameters. So there are settings that can be set, whether you want to include past due requirements or not include it. And so that will adjust how the analytics showcase in the planner view as well. So we do have the capability of seeing a lot of that the back orders of the past due demand. All right, I think I've answered all the questions. Please share a little bit about. Okay, I'm really glad that you asked about the cybersecurity. So we are actually we're housed in Microsoft Azure. So again, the IPL engine, like a lot of these technologies, these advanced technologies out there, it's in Python, but we are completely hosted in Microsoft Azure. We follow all their best practices. We have two-factor authentication, and we most of the data that we receive is actually not really protected, but we also do recognize that supplier lists and specifically supplier list combined with or married to the unit costs for a part, that is something that most companies are like, oh, that's pretty sensitive. Now, everything that comes to us comes straight into Microsoft. It's very secure. We do audits and checks frequently, for any types of issues, and we do follow all the best practices. And essentially, someone would have to hack Microsoft to get access to the data. But even on the front end, in our analytics, what we're able to do is offer two-factor authentication. So we do offer that on the front end. And then another thing that we're able to do is that, since some of it is sensitive, like supplier lists and those the costs of the unit costs for the parts, we can actually mask those. So not the unit cost, but the suppliers. We actually don't need the supplier names to come over to us. They could either be a supplier number that's internal to your system, or it could be something else that we mask. So there is that capability as well. But our security is really strong. When I built Perfect Planner, we brought together a team of partners, one of which is, the previous global CTO of IBM. And the whole idea was we want to make sure that people feel very secure in providing us their data, and then also in receiving the insights. Another thing that's really important is that we do not write back to systems. So we do not need to write back to your system. What we're going to do is just provide that decision intelligence. Here's the information that your planners need every day, so they can get it in the cloud, and that you don't have to have concerns about our system messing up, your system. So it's really a one way. We just need the information from you. Usually it happens after MRP runs. So most manufacturers are going to run that at, midnight or 2 a.m. The MRP process runs for an hour or two. And then early morning, as soon as that process is done, we have data being sent to us, the fresh data. And then we'll do all those analytics, and planners will walk in. For us, it takes us milliseconds or seconds to do. So planners are walking in, even if they come in at 5 a.m. and their to-do lists are ready. Can you demo for any company? Yes, we'd be happy to demo for any company. So thank you for that question, Larry. Again, we would be happy to even run your data. If there is something that you're interested in, I know that when I was going through all this research, and I'm still doing the research, we improve this all the time. We're always improving, trying to make sure it's really, really accurate. But something that we can say is that, we have high confidence in our solution. We can run someone's data. It takes us about 2 weeks to normalize. And then we also make sure that the accuracy is really high. But we can run someone's data in usually 10 to 14 days, very first time. And essentially, we're doing the integration. So we're normalizing with the data and we're running that data. And usually on the very first run, we have over 99% accuracy. And so most companies, they'll put us to the test. We'll run their data and then they're going to sit down with us and they'll bring a planner buyer into the room and they'll walk through that list one by one and see if it really is accurate. And so that's a really fun time to do because, it knows that we've done a good job if we have a very accurate list. How many companies are currently? So, because of a lot of the different industries that we're working with, we have a lot of NDAs in place. And a lot of times is that, when you look at Perfect Planner and the type of software solution it is a competitive advantage. And a lot of companies look at that and a lot of the research that we've done. And there's not a lot of good MRP solutions out there. I probably reviewed a couple hundred different solutions in my time in industry and digital transformation. And this was the one area that just seemed like a gap. I'm like, man, someone needs to build something that's really good in this space. And so we have 9 NDAs in place. And so that is who we are working with currently. Let's see, how can we contact Perfect Planner? Thanks for the question, Larry. So you can contact us directly. You can go through Larry. There's a lot of different ways. Please reach out. You can reach out to myself. There's Adam Hassan, who is our VP of Business Development. He is a person that can be reached out to. You can reach out. Go to perfectplanner.io. Info@perfectplanner.io will actually come straight to me as well as a lot of other people in Perfect Planner, and we can set up a demo if you'd like to see it. And so, again, I know we're 2 minutes over time, but if you have questions, you can send them straight to me. My email address is thomas.beil@perfectplanner.io, and I'm very responsive. I'll answer your questions. And also, if you're interested in maybe having a demo for your company, I'm happy to do that as well. And we can set that up. It's no pressure. We're really, on the Perfect Planner side, if you look at our group, most of us are academics. We all came from industry, but we're in academics now. We're in research and development now. And we really believe that, we're trying to help companies. This is a huge challenge. It gets magnified when there's big economic events. But what we would like to do is if there's a way that we can support companies and they're experiencing this challenge, then we'd like to do so. And I think that you'll also find that Perfect Planner is actually a pretty economical solution when you consider the ROI that comes from it. Because we're going to pinpoint shortages, we're going to reduce expedites, we're going to help you with inventory and a lot of other things in the process. Well, hey, thank you so much for this time. I will hand it back over to Larry. Sorry, I'm 3 minutes over, buddy, but.
Oh, that's fine, Thomas. Thank you very much. And Ben, jump in if I'm going to miss anything here, but I only have 2 quick things to share. First, to Thomas, a big thank you from ASCM Rochester chapter. And as always, we're going to give that speaker something, maybe a nice pen. Now, what we'll give him normally, if he's in our area, we'll give him the Wegmans gift card. But I don't think Wegmans gets down your way, does it?
No, sir.
You'll have to deal with our Amazon gift card. We'll send it to you electronically, and we thank you very much for taking your time and sharing this with everybody. The second thing and the last thing is for everybody else. Here's the deal. We think we're pretty smart at ASCM Rochester, and therefore we're smart enough to know we're not very smart. And what we mean by that is we need your help to make sure that we're on the right track. Did this help you? Send us a note. Send us a message. Is there something else going on in your companies, in your careers? S&OP is always favorite. But our board of directors, of which at least half of the 10 people on our board is currently on this call, and we don't pay them to do it. And they're all itching to make sure our program year, which we get 12 shots a year to send stuff out to you, and it's always going to be virtual as long as I'm alive and kicking in ASCM Rochester. We want to do things that you want to see. So please give us some hints, and we'll take it from there. So Ben, you want to close it off for the group, or are we